Welcome to Better Together with your hosts, EmmaLee Italia and Jennifer Morrow. When we all work together, we are stronger and can accomplish more for the kingdom of God. And now, here are the hosts of Better Together, EmmaLee Italia and Jennifer Morrow.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Better Together. As the intro says, I'm Jen Morrow.
I'm EmmaLee Italia.
And we took a summer, off a little bit to come up with some new and exciting ideas and live out a lot of new and exciting things in our diocese. But we hope everybody's been doing good.
Oh, my goodness. It just felt like one week after another had something going on. Before you know it, it was September. So, wait a minute. What happened?
Right, yeah.
What happened to all of our planning sessions?
Well, you had a couple of big milestones personally with your husband and things like that.
Yes, John was ordained on May 18th for the Diocese of Trenton as a permanent deacon, so that was exciting. He's serving our parish, St. Paul's in Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's hit the ground running. They've been giving him all kinds of stuff to do. So every weekend it's like, all right, which mass are you going to? Okay, you're going to these two, and I'm going to be at these two, and at least my daughter can drive now, so she can be like, yeah, I'm going to this other one. So
your daughter's driving? Of course
Yes.
she would be. She's probably like 16 or 17.
No, she's 18.
No!
She started college this fall. So yeah, she's driving. She's driving herself to school and everything. So yeah, that was pretty wild transition. But
Okay.
Yeah. And then you had some great summer travels, or like when did you do your Germany trip? That was in the
Easter.
spring. That was
Yeah,
Easter. That's right.
And then summer was pretty low key personally. Like some local vacation. Had a lot of family come visit me, which was very exciting
nice.
actually. But work wise, in the Diocese of Camden, we welcomed a new coadjutor bishop, Bishop Joseph Williams from Minnesota. So early September was very busy in the Diocese of Camden. We had a Vespers and then Mass of Welcome for coadjutor bishop, and he will be serving alongside Bishop Sullivan. Bishop Sullivan is our bishop until March 17th of next year, God willing, and then Bishop Williams will step into the role as the 9th Bishop of Camden. And in the meantime, the two of them are touring. I was going to say not just South Jersey because we saw them yesterday.
Right.
It's something we're going to talk about with our guest in a second, but it has been exciting. And I will tell you, working in Catholic media, you thought it was a lot of work following one bishop around.
Oh,
Try
man.
two. Because now they are dividing their divide and conquer. And I'm like, our journalists, actually, shout out. Any journalist looking for some work, please contact Jen Morrow at the Catholic Star Herald. Not allowed to do that.
We're always looking for writers and photographers for Diocese of Trenton at the Trenton Monitor, too. So, definitely look us up. We're all over our website, contact information, but we definitely can use more staff. There's so much going on. It's important to cover.
It is. So, another shout out. I know all of our dioceses actually could use some freelance writers and photographers. So you're interested, reach out to either EmmaLee or myself at our respective newspapers, magazines, and we'll put you in touch with the right people.
You got it.
So we have an exciting guest today. I'm sure we can. I know, in studio guest. What up? We have, you should introduce him because I feel a little like after the what up that maybe that wasn't exactly.
We'd like to introduce James King, who is the executive director of the New Jersey Catholic Conference, right here in the Diocese of Trenton, but representing the entire state of New Jersey, and it's the public policy arm of the bishops of New Jersey. So when the bishops have something to say within the Catholic Church, through the New Jersey Catholic Conference, that's the vehicle that they use to spread a lot of the policies that they have to talk about, especially when it comes to our political sphere, or how the Catholic Church lands on particular issues.
Mm-hmm.
So, wonderful to have you in studio with us, Jim.
Oh, yeah. You don't.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Okay, I'm
Good.
sorry.
No, you were right. You were right.
I need my 10-year-old here with all this technology around to guide me through it. I'm sorry. This is new to me. So, Jen, EmmaLee, thank you for having me on. It's great to be here. I'm very excited to discuss the work of the conference and what's going on politically. It's going to be a great opportunity. But, I want to say, Jennifer, I had a chance to go to the Mass for Welcome, and I was quite impressed with all the work you and your team and the whole diocese did, the whole diocesan staff. That was quite an event. I don't think my head was spinning at the end of it, between the Mass and the reception. It was just so many moving parts. I was amazed how well everything ran. It was so efficient, no hassles for anyone to kudos to you and the other diocesan staffers and Bishop Sullivan and Bishop Williams. Tremendous job. So
Thank you.
maybe you guys can go into event planning or something. That's a little side hustle there, but it was great. So
good idea.
We'll do that with all of our extra time.
Yeah, right. And then
Thank you.
I do want to piggyback on one thing you said. The Catholic Conference is also looking for freelance writers. So if anybody wants to, email us at our website, that's njcatholic.org, and we'll be happy to look at some of your work and possibly put you on the payroll. So,
Hey. All right. So already we've completely promoted all of our entities
There we
and
go.
hopefully
There we
getting
go.
some new talent.
there we go.
Fantastic.
But yes, Jim, you and I have seen each other quite a bit, a lot in the last couple of weeks. Not only
Yes.
at the Mass for Welcome, but the three of us were at the Mass for Life on yesterday, which for us is
September 26th.
Thank you, September. Ooh,
Yes.
September 26th.
Yes.
So you want to talk a little bit about how what happened yesterday and how it got organized?
Yeah, sure. So, after the fall of Roe, or the overturning of the Dobbs decision in 2022, a lot of the pro-life activities went back to the states, and obviously here in New Jersey, legislatively and culturally, we've seen that come up, and we've been working on that. So, what the National March for Life organization has done, and they're the ones that planned the March for Life in Washington that everybody's used to going to in January. So we really need to take our efforts to the state level. So you've seen across the country state marches for life start to occur. So Pennsylvania had theirs. I think it was their third one, actually. They had theirs on Monday. My son and daughter both went to it. This was the second year for my son. He loved it. He went with his high school. So he came home. Just a little aside here, we are close friends with a couple of priests from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, and one of my former classmates, I was in the seminary for about 6 years, one of my former classmates is now one of the auxiliary bishops of Philadelphia, and he's known my son since he was an infant, and he's come over and had dinner with us, and we were invited to his Episcopal ordination, and our friend saw my son at the march and went up to him and asked him how he was doing, and my son felt like a rock star. He's like, "Oh, Bishop so-and-so, Bishop Cook came up and said hi to me, in front of everyone." So he felt like a VIP because he had Bishop coming up and saying hi to him. So that was Pennsylvania's on year 3. I know Connecticut, I believe, had their first one earlier this year, and then other states have had them. So they're popping up. So New Jersey planned, the National Right to Life organization planned one for New Jersey for yesterday. We got word about it about a year ago, and really all of the credit for the Mass for Life, the idea, from conception to actual execution, and how wonderful it turned out, because I really thought it was a tremendous success. I've heard from a number of the bishops how pleased they were with the turnout, with just the overall day, or just the overall event of having the Mass. And from that, from conception to that point yesterday is a true testament to the work and collaboration of the Diocesan Respect Life directors. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So when they announced the March for Life about a year ago, Diocesan Respect Life directors said, we should do something before the march for Catholics who are coming to the area, really help raise awareness and recruit people to attend. And they put a proposal together. I took it before the bishops last December. The bishops agreed. They said, "Yeah, this is a great idea. Run with it." And it was the planning of it. Yeah, both of you probably know the planning of any event doesn't come without its challenges, and especially when it's the first time. The first time, all you hear at times are the possible pitfalls or the possible, this is what's going to go wrong. This can go wrong, and you really felt. I mean, at least for myself, as we got into this home stretch, like the last 2 weeks of planning. Mm-hmm. And especially this week, before it got to the actual day, you really felt the Holy Spirit was guiding it because, things were just coming together, emails were going out, decisions were being made. There was a lot of, pre-planning that went to it, and even like the little challenges, like our director of security, who was running security for the event around the perimeter, came down with COVID. And he called me the day before, and he's like, "I'm not going to be there." But his team was there, and he had properly briefed them, and because of all the pre-planning work that went into it, there was no issue at all, and he was still in touch. He was, texting all of us, asking us any issues, anything he can do. So, so it really is a testament to the work of the Diocesan Respect Life directors. And I wanted to make sure everybody knew that from day one when we announced we were doing this Mass, that it was a collaborative effort because, they do deserve all the credit, and even in a special way, I'd like to give compliments to the Diocese of Trenton's team, from Ray and Bennett, and her media team that were there yesterday, to Father Mike Hall and Carolyn Norbert from his office, the Office of Worship. I mean, they did such a spectacular job. It was one time where I didn't feel like I had to overbear on people or try to micromanage.
Right.
It was like, oh, you're taking care of it? Great. You guys are the pros. I'm just going to stay out of your way and try not to mess anything up. So it was a spectacular day. I think all told, we had around 1,200 Catholics attend the Mass, interestingly, when we went over to the rally, it was the rally was filled with Catholics. It was, we got there and, there was maybe 150, 200 people in the State House Annex Square. Mm-hmm. And I walked up and somebody said to me, "Where's everybody?" I said, "Don't worry, they're all coming. They're all coming from the cathedral." And I think it took a good 20, 30 minutes for everyone to process from the cathedral or walk from the cathedral to the annex. So, and then the square just filled up. It was.
And it was definitely something to see. Like if anybody was not couldn't attend the Mass on September 26th.
26.
I don't know why I can't remember what the date is, but it was live streamed on diocesan media from Trenton.
Right. So if you go to youtube.com/Trenton Diocese, right now it's the first video that comes up. Mm-hmm. And it was also transcribed in Spanish. So if you need the Spanish language, they have that available as well. And what was so amazing is they had no idea, since this was the first one, how many people to expect. And so they said, we just have to plan for a full cathedral, and it was full and then some. Right. And they had the overflow downstairs, and so many schools came from all across the state, all the way from Newark and Patterson, and it was just impressive.
It was so beautiful to see all of the Diocese of New Jersey filling the cathedral, as EmmaLee said, downstairs, and then all of the bishops from across the state up on the altar and celebrating Mass together. And priests from all over the state. So it was really a true Better Together moment.
It was.
It was, yes. I think that's what we'll entitle the Mass for Life next year.
There we
the
go.
Better Together Mass.
Oh, I like it.
We'll brand it. We'll make you guys the main sponsor for it. We'll do it again next year.
We're definitely doing it again next year now.
Yeah, I always say if. I say God willing. I was taught
that.
My third grade teacher, Sister Mary Owen, always said God willing. Nothing's ever promised. Just say God willing every day. So
we've laid the groundwork, so it would be a shame not to pursue saying no. Now that we know the blueprint,
I think it's definitely going to lead to future statewide events, not just for life issues, but for other issues. Because early on, some of the challenges as I was talking about, some of the challenges we faced was the unknown. Like how is parking going to work out? I mean, Trenton's a city. There's not a lot of parking around the cathedral, and people were concerned: is that going to discourage people from attending? And where we're going to put the buses, where we're going to, it came down to even having conversations of people saying, well, should we get water and hand that out to the participants, and being like, well, we're talking 1,200 people. Are we talking about truckloads of water? Who's going to fund that? So there were those type of logistical unknowns that became challenges. And I think sometimes in the past, when I've talked about statewide events, those logistical challenges have become more reasons not to do something. But now that we've proven we can do it, I do think you're going to see an openness and a willingness to do it again, because like you said, EmmaLee, we have that blueprint now, and there's no reason not to do it. So you're right. I do think we're going to be doing this again next year, God willing. And see, it comes out just like habit right there. I just say it.
There you go.
But I do think we will be doing this again, and hopefully we'll be seeing it again with other statewide issues and statewide events. So
great. Well, everybody, I definitely think you should go check it out on live stream. Bishop O'Connell preached the homily. It was a very bold, I thought, homily, a very powerful homily. If you don't mind, I'm going to just read a little bit of it.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just thought it was
very quotable.
Yes, it is very quotable. And as the writers here, I don't even know where to start quoting because it was all phenomenal. But I'll just read a little bit of it so that everybody is tempted to go.
Unabashedly strong in his message.
Exactly.
I was really, really edified hearing that.
And, I'm sure we've all heard it. I'm sure you heard it too, Jim, is that, it talking to people in the pews even before is that's what they said that we needed. We need to be bold, right?
Yeah.
That's what, and then so today, Bishop O'Connell, I'll just do some of the highlights. He said, today in Trenton, we in all the dioceses of New Jersey affirm that duty to protect. One need not be a Catholic to express and believe it. One needs only to be a rational, honest human being. Then he goes on to say, we, all of us, every one of us created by God as we are. That is truth. And he goes to quote Jeremiah, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. So he says, our creation, our very lives, therefore, are no mistake, are never a mistake, are no accident, are never an accident. That is the truth. And then he says, we cannot be a Catholic without being rooted in our deep convictions. I'm totally messing that up. Let me start that over. But one cannot, however, be a Catholic without that conviction rooted deep in our souls as a preeminent priority of our Catholic faith. You know, he really said, this is who we are as Catholics. Yeah. It's our duty to protect as Catholics. And then we served as that witness by going up to the State House Annex, and there were so many speeches, and then people of all ages, from infants to those in wheelchairs, marched.
It was a very diverse group, I thought, yesterday, you know, from ages to cultural backgrounds, even to faith denominations that were represented. I mean, Catholics obviously were the majority there, but there were other faith groups represented, and I thought that was such a, you know, it was such a New Jersey thing because we're such a diverse state, so it was good that we had a diverse March for Life. But I just wanted to mention, going back to the schools, I was most impressed with the students when they marched yesterday. Everything, for the most part, was a peaceful march, but we did encounter a couple of instances where people were expressing their disagreement with us as we were, walking through the streets of Trenton. And some of these students did not hide their pro-life convictions, you know, in a very peaceful way, kind of just countered, held up their signs as they walked by. And, one individual in particular that I recall seeing yesterday was quite hostile and used some very choice language towards the crowd, and use some hand signals towards us.
Oh my goodness!
And these students, they didn't hide, they didn't walk away. They just held up their signs and smiled at them. And I thought to myself, gosh, at that age, I don't think I would have been able to do that. I've been too worried about looking uncool or being unpopular. And I give them all the credit in the world. It was just it was an amazing testament to see somebody people that age kind of stand up for what their beliefs are in that.
That is a great segue to what else we're going to be talking about, which is civility and discourse. But before we get there, since we are going into October, and which is Respect Life Month, just kind of wanted to regroup. But how do you think that the Respect Life movement has changed since it went from the federal level to the states? Like, has it lost some of that momentum, or what we saw yesterday has it rekindled?
I don't think. I mean, from in terms of a conviction standpoint, I don't think that's lost. I think people are as committed to the pro-life movement as they were 2 years ago, fighting for the dignity of life from conception to natural death. I think what we're at is a crossroads of how do we re-strategize. Everything had been focused on Roe for 40 some years before the Dobbs decision. And the church was doing a lot of great pro-life work before that. So, we heard talks on Rachel's Vineyard and Project Rachel yesterday. And, the one thing I want people to understand is that's been around for years. And that wasn't a result of the Dobbs decision. The church has been doing that type of healing ministry for years. The same with any type of resources we give for helping moms in needs. We've been doing that for years as well. And I think because we were so focused on overturning Roe at the federal level, those efforts may have been overshadowed to the wider audience. I mean, obviously there were people in the Catholic community knew those projects were going on and those efforts were going on, but everything was always focused on how do we overturn Roe, how do we stop abortion, and I think since that's happened, now we're kind of like, okay, what do we do now? And that's where we're still, I think, as a community, trying to figure out, trying to come up with the next strategy, and it's hard it's like turning a tanker, it's not turning a car. You're on a course for 40 years and all of a sudden you have to change course a little bit. So I was talking to my jiu-jitsu coach the other day, and because I'm preparing to test for my next belt, or hopefully my next belt, but I'm just preparing to take a test in jiu-jitsu, and one aspect he pointed out about my current status, because I'm a white belt, I'm still learning, been doing it for a year and a half, and he says you've become too focused on your defense and getting out of trouble. You're not learning the offense. You're not learning how to go on the attack. And that's honestly what I've done for the last year is just learning how to protect myself. And, I've gotten to a level where now I can get out of a bad situation from somebody who's my skill level, maybe a little bit higher. The guys that are more experienced just treat me like a rag doll. And, it's quite comical. My son likes coming to class and watching some 145-pound guy like throw his 270-pound dad around and, beat him up, and they cheer him on and everything. But the correlation I'm making here is I think, for 40 years we were focused on overturning. And now, like just with my jiu-jitsu, now I'm kind of able to get out of a bad situation, but now I'm stuck because I'm like, I haven't trained offense. I don't know what I'm doing. Like I sit there and I'm like, oh, what do I do now? I've never been in this position before. And I look just as confused as I did on day one. So my coach was pointing that out to me. And I think there's a little bit of that in the pro-life movement. We were so focused on overturning row. And even though we had these other projects going on, now it's like, what do we do now? We weren't ready for this position. So, and again, I think there's a lot of good work going on. I think there's a lot of dedicated people. So I don't think we've necessarily lost momentum. I think it's just how do we direct that momentum? How do we direct that energy and go with the new circumstances?
A couple of statistics that were brought out at the rally, but some of the speakers were that the pregnancy resource centers that are available throughout New Jersey and throughout the country. I was actually really surprised by these statistics. I think it was said that there were over 50 in New Jersey alone, and I think the statistics they had for 2022, they served over 23,000 men, women, and youth, and they provided services valued at more than $3 million, and that was without any state or federal funding. So the shift that you're talking about, I think, is in our response to the people who need help so that abortion becomes unthinkable. Mm-hmm. So that I've noticed that vernacular coming out. We want to make it unthinkable. Yeah. We want to change hearts and minds, less about, the laws, because, we still are fighting for the lawmakers to recognize the dignity of all life. But at the same time, we have the power to do something on the ground. And I'd also heard that there are over 3,000 of these centers across the United States. So these, I think, are growing in support as people realize, okay, we're going to have to do something in our state to respond to this situation now that it's gone from a federal to a state level.
Yeah. EmmaLee, you bring up a great point about the changing of hearts and minds and responding there. And, we obviously have to continue focusing on the legislature and policy and what's being proposed and discussed and debated. I mean, if we didn't do that, I wouldn't have a job. But, so that's important. But I think sometimes people fall into the misconception that if we change a law, and I think Dobbs is the example of this, if we change a law overnight, there's going to be this miraculous conversion of culture. And that's obviously not the case that we're experiencing right now. And, my job, from my perspective, is challenging because I'll give you another, and this is a troubling stat. Pew did a survey of Catholics back in the spring, and they found 6 in 10 Catholics that they polled do not agree with the church's stance on abortion. So 60% of the counts,
right?
I'm sorry.
Has that changed since
well, you're
the
seeing
Dobbs
the number
decision?
creep up. Yeah, I don't know what the percentage increase is off the top of my head, but yes, you have seen it go from, I think it was almost hovering around 50-50 or 49-50, and now it's clearly gone above 50% disagree with the church. So from my perspective, as the lobbyist for the church and the state and our team, if there is a bill proposed or a regulation proposed, and I go in and try to talk to a legislator about it, saying I represent the Catholic community. Well, they read the same polls I do. They read the same news I do. In some cases, they don't read the same news because they only read the secular news, and we know sometimes we don't get the best representation, or the most accurate representation, I should say, in the secular media. But, so if I go in and say I represent Catholics, we don't support this, they're like, well, Pew's saying 60% of the Catholics they surveyed don't even agree with you. So, you need to have that cultural change to have that legislative change. It's not enough to think that the legislative change is, all that we need. Obviously we have to be vocal. We have to be bold, just as Bishop O'Connell was yesterday. We have to proclaim the truth. We can't shy away from it, but we can't limit our focus. And this kind of goes back to what you're talking about, post Dobbs, the momentum. We can't limit our focus to just legislation. We really have to get out there and change the culture.
Mm-hmm. Definitely true. Did you have more that you wanted to ask about or shall we segue to the
segue? I'm just
Do you
making
want to
notes.
go into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a little bit? I'm a little bit more comfortable
Kind
now.
of, to be honest, a little
Just
bit.
kidding.
A little bit.
Okay. We could schedule that for
That'll
another
be part
podcast.
2.
Okay. Yeah.
Faith in sports.
Yeah, there you go.
Faith in jiu-jitsu.
Finding Jesus as you're getting choked or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding Jesus in jiu-jitsu.
I have many come to Jesus moments when I'm training.
Oh,
So
yeah, so let's change. Like I said, October is Respect Life Month, but I think that the webinar that you're having when we're talking about civility and political discourse is also Respect Life, because it's all about treating each other as humans.
yes,
So I think it's a perfect month that y'all are having the webinar.
I agree.
I'm
I
sure you
agree.
planned that. And
Yes, exactly. When we looked at our calendar for the year, we said October because it's Respect Life Month. Let's do a webinar on civility. Have nothing to do with the national election coming up in November. Yeah, that everybody wants to talk about.
So for those who didn't hear about it yet, it's been reported online, but it'll be October 9th at 6:30 p.m. And the webinar will be Blessed Are the Peacemakers.
Yes.
And Jim will be one of the panelists.
Correct.
And then the other 2 panelists are other...
So we have a representative from USCCB, EmmaLee Novak. She is the Director of Education Outreach for the Department of Justice, Peace, and Human Development. There might have been a change to that office title. So, EmmaLee, apologies if you when you hear this, listen to this podcast, if I got that wrong. And then my counterpart from the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference will be joining us, Eric Failing, and he'll be bringing the Pennsylvania perspective to our discussion on faithful citizenship. I think people should be interested in that. Pennsylvania is obviously a battleground state, so although we deal with, there's a lot of overlap in what we deal with come election time and on these issues. I think it's maybe even like on steroids in Pennsylvania, just because there's so much attention on that state. I mean, nobody really looks at New Jersey on at a national level, unfortunately, as being a battleground. So he's obviously facing some challenges that we're not used to here in New Jersey. You don't have to face when it comes to talking about elections and national elections. So I think it'll be helpful for Catholics in New Jersey to hear that perspective. And we're going to go back and forth, talk about best practices, in terms of preparing yourself for the election, best practices in terms of bringing civility to politics and your political discourse and your discourse on public policy.
And it's easy to forget when it's such a charged atmosphere and there are so many contentious issues at stake, and the candidates don't really see eye to eye on very much at all. So it's difficult as a Catholic to know not only what to do at the ballot box, but also how to have those discussions in a way that you don't burn bridges.
Yes.
With your colleagues, with your family,
Sitting
because
across the
life goes
table.
on after the election, and we
Yes.
have to be able to get along with everyone. So
I've worked for the Catholic Conference for 13 years, and my wife always says, I hate taking you to social events because your job involves the 2 topics that you're never supposed to talk about at social events, politics and religion. So, and needless to say, it's helped me try to become a better conversationalist because I just ask a lot of questions of the person I'm talking with to, sometimes avoid that because of the fear of, of what may come out. But I do think it's also made me better in having those conversations because, as you said, you don't want to burn those bridges. We're supposed to bring Christ to everyone we encounter. We're supposed to bring the truth of the gospel, and not in a militant way, but in the compassionate, merciful way that the Lord did it. So, I simply say this: no matter what we do, and I know some people may disagree with this, but if you work for the church, your role as reporters in the media for the church, my role over at the legislature, everything. Single person that works for a church, it can be boiled down to this: we're all called to be evangelizers. I mean, that's the common thread of all of our work for the church. Now, we bring our talents to it, and the Lord has us do very specific missions, just like Paul talked about in his epistle about, different parts of the body have different functions. But we're all called to be evangelizers, and what changes is who are we called to evangelize to? I look at it like I'm called to bring the gospel to the State House, and what is the best method to do that? Is it branding pitchforks and torches and, fire and brimstone, or is it bringing it the way Christ brought it, even to people who may not agree with our message? I have a lot of conversations with people that don't agree with us over at the State House on a couple of issues, but we try to find those issues that we do agree on and allow that to become the foundation to have those difficult conversations. My predecessor, Pat Brannigan, who's a deacon here in the Diocese of Trenton, used to tell me all the time when I first started with the conference that, people, when they lost the ability to have dinner with each other, people on either sides of the aisle, and have their families get together, he goes, he believes that was the start of the fall of civility in politics. He goes, he remembers when he would work, where he was working for the governor's office, a legislator was asked, well, why can't you say something negative about your opponent on the other side of the aisle? He goes, how can I say something negative about someone who's married to one of my wife's best friends? Wow. That personal relationship. I'm butchering that. Sorry, Deacon Brannigan, but yeah, but the point is, like, if you have that personal relationship, it makes it much harder to, say something negative or be unkind or unchristlike to them.
And when the national conversation has turned ugly on, most media that you hear different things being discussed, it just becomes easier to kind of, go right into that rut again. And just for a perspective, I actually went back and watched a presidential debate from the 1980s just to kind of was it always like this? The contrast could not be more evident. Just even though they were diametrically opposed on different subjects, there was a respect that took place. Like there was a different mannerisms. People didn't interrupt each other. The commentators didn't have to run over anybody because they were trying to extend their time. It was just a very different way of behaving, and I feel like we have gotten away from that. And as Catholics, it's like, with our understanding of the gospel, we're kind of supposed to be setting the standard for that conversation when we are talking about these same subjects. So could you tell us a little bit more about what is faithful citizenship? And then the bishops also had recorded a message that was talking about that as well.
Sure. So faithful citizenship is a teaching document that the USCCB, the bishops have released, and they update it every few years. Don't change anything substantial on it, but kind of try to address it to what the national conversation is focusing on. And it really is a document in terms of helping people understand, how do you properly form your conscience? How do you understand Catholics' role in politics and the public debate? What's necessary to help with those conversations, the virtue of prudence, the care for the dignity of life. But interestingly enough, and I would like to point this out, I won't just jump right into a deep dive on the document, but as I was preparing for our conversation today, I went through it, and there's very little mention about voting in it.
Interesting.
It talks about it's a moral responsibility to be involved in politics, and obviously voting is related to that, so that's going to be under that umbrella, but there's not a thing. There's not a heavy section on when you go into the ballot box. It's all about how do you prepare yourself, your conscience, your understanding of your faith, to take up this moral call to be involved in politics. So, I think what people sometimes limit it to is just preparing for that Tuesday in November when they're going to go into the ballot box and pull a lever. But really, what it's talking about is how do you integrate your role, your obligation in politics into your everyday life, because it's not just that Tuesday in November. It's not just every 4 years with the national election or every 2 years with the Congress, with the midterms or even the state elections. I mean, here in New Jersey, we have an election every year because the state elections are on the off years of the federal election.
Right.
So if you don't like those political ads, you'll probably have about 2 weeks before we start seeing them run for New Jersey, unfortunately. But so it's not just about the election. It's about how do you do this every day as a faithful citizen.
I think that's a really important distinction to make, because, a lot of people are like, all right, there's church and there's state, never the two shall meet. I've heard some people say we need to hear more bold statements from our priests and our bishops. And on the other hand, I've heard, no, we don't want to hear any of that. But there is a difference from what I'm hearing you say, that the Catholic Church doesn't stand up and say, vote for this person, this person. We're talking about conscience.
Right. Our faith is a gift that is meant to be shared. And I think sometimes people like to create a straw man argument against the church and say, well, that's separation of church and state. Don't force your beliefs on me. But when we talk about Catholics' role in politics, we're not talking about going out and advocating that Congress or the legislature pass a law that everybody has to believe in the real presence of the Eucharist, or the Immaculate Conception. What we're talking about is our faith is our foundation that gives us the proper understanding of humanity and what it means to be a human person and the dignity that comes with that and the obligation we have to protect that dignity. And then it's our role as Catholics to take that foundation, take that teaching, and say, how do we address the social ills that we face in society, the racism, the poverty, the attacks on life. That's where our foundation is. That's where our work in those areas is rooted in. So, that's how we take our Catholic faith into faithful citizenship. So I think, too often there's a straw man created, like, oh, you're forcing your beliefs on me. Well, what beliefs am I forcing on you? I'm talking about respecting the human person, respecting your neighbor and helping them overcome challenges and working together to solve some of these societal problems. I had an interesting experience. I had a gentleman stop by my office a couple of months ago. I thank my wife for this because my wife referred me to him. And we had this conversation, and he brought up abortion, and he goes, I just don't, and he's a very faithful individual. He's a truth seeker. He's really, trying to deepen his faith, so I give him a lot of credit. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. But he brought up abortion. He goes, I just don't understand how the church can speak out on abortion. It really should stay out of that area because not everybody agrees with the church. So why are we trying to force our beliefs on other non-Catholics? And I posed to him, I said, well, you can essentially make that argument about any issue the church, political issue, the church is involved in. Immigration, poverty reduction, anyone who disagrees with us can say, well, you're forcing your beliefs on us. And I tried to outline that to them, saying, there's Catholics out there that might not agree with us on how we, handle poverty issues. And they can say, why are we trying to tell the world how to treat poverty? And really tried to boil it down to that, we can't allow our political work to be reduced down to what the majority says. Just because the majority doesn't agree with what our teaching may be on an area, it doesn't make it any less true or any less valid, So, and I think that the easy way out of that is to just say, oh, you're just trying to force our beliefs on us, when I think we can show, objectively speaking, it's not just a Catholic matter to care about the other, to care about the dignity of life.
And it is easier to just shut down the conversation
Right.
than it is to actually have those conversations conclude, in some sort of meeting ground, where, okay, well, we can at least agree on this much. And that's why one of the reasons I think it's important for Catholics to have those conversations is so that that perspective isn't lost simply by being shut down as this is a part of Catholic belief, not a part of, the dignity of the human person across all denominations, all religions. We recognize at a very basic level that, human beings do have certain inalienable rights.
Right.
It's in our Constitution.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's the common good. It's the work of the common good. Our motivations may be different why we work for it, but it's not a religious tenet that we're trying to force on people. It's just it's not Catholic to just believe in the dignity of the immigrant. It's not just it's not just a Catholic teaching. So you're exactly right. I think it's just.
So how are the bishops getting involved in this and also a media promotion through some video messaging? Can you talk a little bit about what they've been working on?
Sure. So this year, first year ever, we've done a unified video message by the bishops talking about faithful citizenship, talking about some of the topics we were just discussing, that the church doesn't promote a particular candidate or endorse a particular party. What we do is encourage people to form their conscience, use the resources that the church has placed out there to do that, and go to and participate in the political process, and make sure it's not just on that Tuesday in November, but it carries on throughout their everyday life, and to bring civility to it. I think one of the things we looked at was if we do another statement in writing, or we ask the bishops to do another statement in writing, how many people are going to read it? We can put it on social media. I know I'm guilty. I'll make a confession right here. I'm guilty. I don't read everything that other bishops put out. I read everything our bishops put out, but other bishops, sometimes because you're just like, okay, are we saying the same thing over and over again? So I think to have this video where they can show their personalities, and all of them did a tremendous job. I mean, you see their personalities, and they all complement each other in terms of their personalities. And we're actually we're finalizing right now. We're doing a compilation video, so the message will be spoken, and it'll be more statewide. So each bishop will edit it down, so each bishop has a different part of the message. So hopefully that will come out. That'll be our October surprise right now. It'll come out next week probably. We'll release that. But we did ones for each bishop so they can release it to their individual flocks, their diocese. And it's just pointing out the resources that the Catholic Conference offers to help people prepare for the election and improve, bring civility to politics. So I think that's tremendously important because people do listen when the bishops speak. You know.
So when that is released, that'll be on njcatholic.org?
njcatholic.org, and we share it with all of our diocesan communications partners, and we've asked that they release it, and they all do. They do a tremendous job getting our product out there, getting the message of the bishops out there, and it's just through social media, Instagram. We haven't branched out. Jennifer, I don't know if has Camden branched out to Snapchat yet. We haven't.
TikTok
or TikTok.
Yeah. It's kind of where we're aiming for next. Yeah.
I brought up Instagram to my 14-year-old daughter the other day. She's like, "Oh, Dad, you're so old."
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So.
No, we're everywhere actually,
so.
But I still call Twitter, so I apologize because I'm like on Twitter, and my boss is like, "You mean X?"
Yeah.
Like, sorry.
Yeah.
But so you were talking about some of the resources. There are more resources on your website if people want to learn more about this topic.
Yeah, so we try to offer people a variety of resources. We have important information on election dates. New Jersey has early voting, early in-person voting, mail-in voting. So we put all that information out there, when that's going to start. We encourage people to place it on their calendar so they get a reminder and they know. We send out alerts for the deadline to register to vote. We encourage people to register to vote, and that is one activity that parishes can take up during election season. We do have a list of do's and don'ts for Catholic organizations, and it's an extensive list to keep people out of, veering outside of the lines here and getting involved in areas that they shouldn't. But, voter registration drives, perfectly acceptable in the parish. Obviously work with your pastor on that, and but yeah, we should be encouraging people to register to vote, to get out and do their civic duty. What else? We have one of the topics one of the resources we offer now is a candidate resource guide. So in the past, people would look for the church to do a questionnaire of candidates, and it's just such a low response rate. And we wanted to use the virtue of prudence that faithful citizenship talks about. We said if we publish a questionnaire that only has certain candidates' responses, does it give the implied or the perspective that we're endorsing those candidates without? So what we do is, in the spirit of faithful citizenship, is saying it's the responsibility of the individual, to form their conscience. We provide the resources. We have links to all of the candidates running for office in New Jersey's campaign websites. And I think that's one of the great things about websites now is they're very vocal and out front about what issues they support and what issues they don't support. So you can come to our website, you can look at your district, and you can go, okay, here's the candidates. And we're talking all the candidates, not just the two major party candidates. And you can go and read that and, see where it aligns with, your Catholic values, your values, and form your conscience.
You talking about that has just pulled up this old memory in my head that, you don't have to be a voting age to start educating yourself. Like I remember, my mom and I sitting at the table, opening up the newspaper, the daily newspaper, where at the time I think it was like the Women's League voters, and they would do the same thing for the local candidates, right? But and I think I was only like 13, right? But that's how I started learning that it is important to vote. It's important to learn who your candidates are and what they stand for. So if you have all those resources, that could be great resources for our Catholic high schools, right, even, and like you said, our parishes. It's never really too early to start learning about faithful citizenship, civility and discourse, and our Catholic values.
Well, that's a great point, Jen. And to tie it into what we were talking about earlier about being prepared for changes, a lot of states are starting to debate lowering the age for voting rights to 16. I know New Jersey either had debated and discussed, or it might be law now, that somebody can participate in a primary if they're 17, as long as they're going to be 18 for the general election. So we have to start, preparing our youth for this responsibility. It can't just be
Right.
something that,
Well, the first time that you exercise that right shouldn't be when you go to the ballot box. Like the first time you engage your brain when it comes to understanding why these particular issues are important, is particularly from a Catholic perspective. Like you need a few years of understanding of, well, this is what the church teaches and this is how we apply it.
Yeah.
Because it can be a little startling to go in there and go, well, all I know is what I saw from some campaign ads.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really the responsibility of the individual to become informed. So it's wonderful that you're condensing that information in one place so that they can, I can see this candidate here and this candidate here, or
Right.
this topic.
And that's all we can hope to do is provide people the information they need to make informed choices and to really wrestle with those topics. And the other plug I will make is that we're not just talking about a national election. Everybody likes to talk about the presidential election, but having worked in politics and in government before I joined the Catholic Conference, I think you see a greater impact to your day-to-day life the more you're involved in your local government.
I was going to say something
school
about
bo-
voter voice.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so the attention often goes to the national and the presidential, but you want to be involved in government. You want to see your vote count. Don't just vote every 4 years for a national election. Know who's running for school board. Know what the issues are. Know what's going on in your municipality. Vote in your municipal elections. That's really the grassroots change that can come about. So, I'm making a plug. Don't just make it about every 4 years national election. Get involved in local politics. Get involved in what's going on in your town and your
And
school
one way
board.
you can do that is to go to njcatholic.org, and you have listed all the issues that are being discussed in our New Jersey State Assembly and in the legislature right now, that you can actually call your Congress people, you can call your representatives and say, I want to, register my interest in this, or, this is how I feel about it. And they'll respond.
And the great point about that is you don't need to wait for us to release an official action alert. Get to know who your representative is, form a relationship. Talk to so many parish groups on non-election years, and they want to do something. I'm like, well, have you reached out to your two assembly members or your state senator? And they're like, well, no, it's not an election year. No, there's no issues. Well, reach out to them. And the other key, too, is go to them with something that you want to work on with them. You don't go for a demand and an ask. Go, hey, we have this food pantry, and you do constituent services. Feel free to refer your constituents to us. We'll be your partner. I go into every meeting with a legislator with a resource of how we can help their constituents. And I say to them, I want you to make sure we're not just here asking you for things, but we see the common, it goes back to faithful citizenship. We see the common work that we all share. And it goes a long way in building relationships. And it makes having those difficult conversations a lot easier because they respect you, you respect them, and you can have that conversation.
Right, you develop that relationship so that when things come up, they may be reaching out to you. And
I have it at least a couple times a month. I get a phone call from a legislative office saying we have someone, and our Catholic Charities agencies in New Jersey rock, so they always respond. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we talked already a little bit because of the march, the ecumenical of our similarities of the respect for dignity. These resources are good for not just Catholics.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Yeah,
this is out there for anybody who just wants to make an informed decision
right.
about where our candidates stand and take it to prayer yourself.
I agree, and even at the elementary level, I was having breakfast with friends last Friday, and somebody asked the question, "Who's your federal senator?" And nobody at the table. I stayed quiet, but nobody at the table could answer, and they're like, "I think it's." And they were naming congressman. I think one person named somebody who had passed away and never ran for politics, but was never in office. But anyway, you can come to our website and get a basic Civics 101 lesson. We have all the names of the legislators, their contact information, their districts. So,
well, we only have a couple more minutes left, so I do want to just dive into the webinar one more time to remind people when it is and what it is.
It's Blessed Are the Peacemakers. The full title is Blessed Are the Peacemakers, Preparing for the Upcoming Presidential Election and How Catholics Can Bring Civility Back to Politics. And it's Wednesday, October 9th at 6:30 p.m., and you can do it from the comfort of your own home. it's a webinar.
And there's a means to sign up. Is that I know we promoted it in the Monitor, and then is it also on the landing page?
It's
at
on
NJ
our
Catholic?
website. You can go right to njcatholic.org and our banner. Click on the banner, and it'll take you right to the registration page. And this is key. We're also going to simulcast it in Spanish
Oh, nice.
this year. So
I love it.
yeah.
Okay,
So,
well, that's good to
yeah.
know. I'm gonna let. We also ran it in the Catholic Star Herald. Just want you to know that. That story was written by somebody I know very well, EmmaLee Italia. But yeah, so if it's going to be in Spanish too, I
Same
think-
registration page.
Same registration page.
mhm,
Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to use the Zoom feature to have somebody translate it. It's going to be like I was at a UN conference or something.
Oh,
I'll
wow.
be talking, and they'll be translating it in real time.
Fantastic.
So,
This is
and we do
high-tech.
have our promotional materials in Spanish as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We
Good,
have
so
been,
that-
yeah.
Oh,
I
great.
think, yeah,
Thank you.
pushing that out. Well, you guys are been doing a good job over there. I'm sure that is a lot of work to get all those resources together and pull all that technology together.
It's a team effort, and nothing gets done without the team. And we have a lot of help from the diocese, so we're a small shop. But again, just like the Mass for Life, nothing comes together unless you're willing to collaborate and work together as a team. Yeah.
For sure.
There you go.
I'm excited to hear the conversation with you and with EmmaLee and with Eric. Just, your different perspectives from your different regions and constituents. So
Yeah, the pressure's on now.
yeah,
And before we run out of time, I'm going to give my own little plug.
you should.
So, all right. A week before the webinar, the Diocese of Camden has a similar event coming up. It's called Civilize It, Living Authentically Catholic in a Divided America. It'll be October 2nd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Christ Starlight Church in Cherry Hill. And we will have 3 speakers. Father John Thomas, he's the pastor of Christ the King in Haddonfield. Dr. Maria Elena Hellion, who is our executive director of Catholic Charities of South Jersey. I see we were talking about our
Catholic Charities.
Catholic Charities
Dr.
friends.
Yeah, Maria's great.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, and Dr. Kenneth Craycraft, he will be visiting the area. He's an author of the book titled "Citizens Yet Strangers: Living Authentically Catholic in a Divided America." So I think there's a definite theme here of that
Definitely.
idea of division and civility and just trying to get back on track. I like what you said about Deacon Brannigan's.
How can you make fun? And how can you, talk disrespectfully of someone your wife is friends with, or your wife's, your wives are friends. So, another book I'd recommend is Chris Matthews did one on Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. It's called The Gipper and Tip or something like that. And again, it highlights, EmmaLee, you were talking about watching an old debate. It highlights how these two men who were so politically different could have a cocktail at the end of the day with each other and be, have that friendship. So I
Imagine
think
that used to be the norm.
It did.
It used to be much more, we have more in common than that which we disagree about. So, why not try to come together on those projects that actually mean something? And then, the difference is we can have those discussions and then, go out and have a drink and go back to work the next day.
my first time at the New Jersey State House when I started with the conference, I was sitting in the Senate, I think it was Senate Judiciary, just real quick, and I saw the Senate President come in, and I saw the Senate Minority Leader come in, and they're both big, they were both big men at the time, imposing. And they gave each other the biggest bear hug and slapped each other on the back and were asking each other about their family. And I said, this is the stuff the public doesn't get to see. They think these two men probably hate each other, and they don't. So yeah, it's extremely important.
Good lesson.
So, yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And
Thanks
being
for having
in
me.
studio.
Oh, it was a pleasure. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to come back anytime if you would
Oh,
like
yeah.
to have me talk about maybe do a post-election recap or anything.
That'd be great.
Oh, hey.
So
All right.
And jiu-jitsu.
yeah, and jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I'll be happy to talk. I'll have some new scars to I can show on camera.
Okay.
So.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Oh, well, Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you,
EmmaLee,
EmmaLee.
good to be back in the studio.
This was great. A great way to kick off the year. So I'm really excited for what's coming down the pipe.
There you go. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.